Games Workshop has doubled down on gaslighting their fans regarding the retcon of female Adeptus Custodes. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com this afternoon. And indeed, Games Workshop has doubled down on gaslighting its Warhammer 40k hobbyists and enthusiasts. So just to give you some background context here, Games Workshop retconned the female Adeptus Custodes in their latest codex, Adeptus Custodes, with a short story featuring custodian Kaladice Torvalia Kesh. An excerpt that was leaked ahead of the codex's release on April 27th detailed this. Custodian Kaladice Torvalia Kesh, stood upon the bridge of a Cobra-class destroyer named Vigilant Flame. The warship belonged to the mighty Battlefleet Solar. She lingered in the shadows of the back of the bridge, positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits, at the armament shrines, or in the case of Shipmaster Lethwick, stood Ramrod before his command throne. So clearly a female Adeptus Custodes. This was a clear retcon of the Adeptus Custodes, given previous codexes and lore entries made it abundantly clear that the Adeptus Custodes were an all-male organization. Former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kern shared an excerpt from the Rogue Trader rules in 1987. It states the Adeptus Custodes is the Emperor's inner guard, members of which are privileged in being permitted to serve upon the Emperor, attending to his needs, receiving and recording his directions. These men never leave Earth and only rarely leave the Imperial Palace, an endless black hive of forbidden technology and subterranean passages delving deep within the bowels of the planet. So very clear that they are men. You can see he highlighted it there for you in the screenshot that he posted to X back on April 15th, about 2 weeks ago. He also shared excerpts from the 2017 and 2018 Adeptus Custodes codexes that refer to them as the Brotherhood of Demigods and make it clear they were recruited from the sons of nobles. One excerpt reads, "It is known that all custodians begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of Terra. It is a mark of incredible prestige to surrender one's child to this most glorious of callings within the Imperium, and many notable clans amongst the Terran aristocracy have willingly given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to earn it." So very clear that this was an all-male organization, that they were men, and that you were recruited at infancy. The sons were recruited at infancy from the Terran aristocracy. Despite this being an obvious retcon, Games Workshop gaslit hobbyists, claiming that female custodians had always existed. This is what the official Warhammer account posted on X. They posted this multiple times, but here's the main one. They posted on April 14. "Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians." So the company has since doubled down in a blog post on their Warhammer community website, trying to sell the Adeptus Custodes with the release of the upcoming codex. They posted this on April 26th, so just about a couple days ago. And instead of noting that Adeptus Custodes are recruited from the sons of nobles, the blog post states this: "Potential custodians are taken in at a very young age to better survive the rigors of their transformation, no older than late infancy, for the fundamental changes that will be wrought upon their flesh, minds, and souls are tantamount to apotheosis. It is considered a great honor for those of Terran noble houses to submit a child." So very clearly doubling down on the gaslight. It's no longer a son. They're now saying it is a child. This is a clear retcon. And not only is it a retcon, but it is Games Workshop trying to rewrite their own lore, rewrite their own history, and gaslighting people, saying that female custodians always existed, when the truth is they simply did not. As YouTuber, I think YouTuber and Demian did a really good job here, pointed this out, has some really good commentary. I'm going to read a little bit of it here. He says, "Not a male child anymore, just a child. You see how easy it is to retcon things and push narratives. All it takes is a simple push." I would say it's just changing one word. That's literally what they did here. It should be submit a son, and they changed it to child. A little change here or there until eventually people don't know the truth anymore. And that's exactly what this is all about. They're trying to rewrite their own history, and they're lying to you about it to make you think that their lie is the truth when it's not. And that's what irks me the most, he says, is that we're seeing things getting deliberately changed in front of our eyes, and when we question it, we're being called crazy. Exactly. A little bit later in his video, I thought he made a really good comparison here to the DC universe and the Amazonians with Wonder Woman, etc., and Themyscira. He says here, the point here is that history, lore, the very concepts of what is fact versus what isn't is important, whether it's nonfiction or fiction itself. Ideas and concepts need to be respected. And the fact these things keep getting changed to fit an agenda that leans only in one direction proves that it's being done deliberately. I 100% agree with that. And then he made this comparison here a little bit later. He says, it would be like me writing a Wonder Woman comic book and suddenly going, actually, there's always been male Amazonians. And actually, most Amazonians are men. And the women are but a small section of the Themyscira that defends the male Amazonians from harm. Feminists would go, but the Themyscira is the paradise of female Amazonians only. This damages the lore. And then he says, and yes, it would be. It would definitely damage the lore in more ways than one, but that's what this is the equivalent of. And I agree, but it doesn't matter. The hypocrisy for these people doesn't matter. They fully embrace the hypocrisy because it's all about power, and it's about pushing that woke ideology, which he noted up here. He says it's being done deliberately. He's absolutely right. But while they're doing this deliberately, and it's clearly being done for political purposes, for ideological purposes, this stuff doesn't work. We see example over example over example. Just look at what's going on with anything that's touched by Sweet Baby Inc. Failure, disaster. Most recently, I just did a video earlier today on Alan Wake 2. Still has not broken even. Still is sitting in the red. Has not recouped its marketing and development costs. We know what happened to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Warner Brothers says that it's going to ruin their basic entire year for their video game side. Ruined. I think just last year they had Hogwarts Legacy. So their DC stuff is a huge problem there with Warner Brothers. So can Zarazal? No one is buying that game. I think less than 10,000 purchases. Another failure. The stuff doesn't work. And there's a reason why this stuff doesn't work. Tolkien explains it. Especially when you're looking at something like Warhammer and you're actually changing the core of your universe. I think you can point to Alan Wake 2 on that. It looks like they did a lot of changes. They race swapped a character, etc. And then obviously Suicide Squad, they did all of these kind of woke ideological changes. Can't comment on the Zal game. Don't know anything about it. It looks like it's its own independent IP. So, but clearly just has Sweet Baby Inc. involved in it. But anyways, this is what Tolkien wrote. He says that a story maker proves himself a successful sub-creator when he makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. Inside it, what he relates is true. It accords with the laws of that world. You therefore believe it while you are, as it were, inside. And remember, they've told us that Adeptus Custodes are all men. They've shown us that. It's been in all of their previous lore books, codexes. They're men. Now, all of a sudden, they're not. So what happens? The moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken. Or rather, art has failed. You are then out in the primary world again, looking at the little abortive secondary world from outside. I think that's key. Abortive secondary world. That is what Warhammer 40K has done to itself. They've aborted their secondary world. I mean, Games Workshop literally is aborting their own IP here. If you are obliged by kindliness or circumstance to stay, then disbelief must be suspended or stifled. Otherwise, listening and looking would become intolerable. And I think that's the case for a number of Warhammer 40K players. We've seen this. They're boycotting Games Workshop. They've canceled their Warhammer Plus subscriptions. Done a whole video documenting that. But this suspension of disbelief is a substitute for the genuine thing, a subterfuge we use when condescending to games or make-believe, or when trying, more or less willingly, to find what virtue we can in the work of an art that has, for us, failed. And given that it's now, I think, in my opinion, an abortive secondary world, more and more people are going to wake up to that, realize that it's an abortive secondary world, because Games Workshop is doubling down on this. They're going to continue to do this. They're willing to do this with the Custodes. What's next? We know that they promised back in 2020 that they were going to be diversifying everything about their game. So I would not be surprised if we do indeed see female Space Marines in the future. And what that will do, in my opinion, is it will drive more and more of their customers away, as they will only see that abortive secondary world. They will no longer be immersed in the actual Warhammer 40,000 universe, because the rules are fundamentally not true to what they had been anymore. They fundamentally changed the rules. So you're out. You're out looking at it and seeing how it's a failure. And what will happen is, while they drive customers away, Competitors will rise up to meet the demand and the immersion that Warhammer 40K once offered. There will be people that will offer alternatives, whether that's in competing novels in the with Black Library, whether that's in a tabletop game, whether that's in animation, whether that's in video games. I think that there will be competitors that will rise up and will supplant Warhammer 40K because they have destroyed their own IP and universe. And we've seen this over and over again. Just look at what Amazon did with the Rings of Power. Look what Amazon did with Wheel of Time. Look what the Walt Disney Company did with Star Wars. Look what the Walt Disney Company did with Marvel. Look at what Netflix has done with The Witcher. Look at what Netflix has done with Cowboy Bebop. There are numerous examples of this, and it all points in the same direction, that people abandon it, sales plummet, and Tolkien, I think, accurately explains why, because people lose their immersion and they see that secondary world as an abortive secondary world now, instead of being fully immersed in it. But let me know what you guys make of Games Workshop doubling down on gaslighting hobbyists and enthusiasts with female Adeptus Custodes. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable to each other, but to always speak the truth.